My name is Craig, and I'm trying to reduce suffering in product development. I'd like to welcome you all here and reiterate, in the 1980s, I used to start participating in conferences and volunteering as an organizer, and I know how much darn work it is to put together a conference. So I really appreciate all of the volunteers who helped. This talk is called AI and Organizational Design. And this is going to be videoed, and eventually it will be on YouTube, and please read this. I've created this presentation mindful that in the future people might look at it on YouTube, and I'm really thinking in terms of senior people in organizations such as HR, etc., who might benefit from hearing about this and its implications. AI and organizational design. A little bit about background. AI is not something new for me. It's been a passion since the late 1970s. And my graduate work is in AI. I was a paid full-time AI developer in 1986. So I've been at this a very long time. My graduate thesis was on the creation of a second-generation AI system that learned automatically what a first-generation AI system understood. And so I have a background in machine learning, automated learning, and so I've been waiting for this, let's call it, moment for a very long time. And this is also not the first AI and organizational talk that I've given at a LESS conference. At the 2020 LESS conference, that was the subject of the talk, AI and organizational design. But because this was at the height of COVID, we were in Amsterdam, a relatively small number of people were there, and I don't think many people saw the point that we were suggesting. And for the people that were there, I was trying to highlight what was coming, but not surprisingly, I suspect that a lot of folks didn't appreciate the impact of what I was trying to suggest at that time, and now it's a little bit more concrete. At that time, I was talking about GPT-3 and its impact that GPT was going to have. It's difficult to predict, especially about the future. And so everything I'm going to say here needs to be really qualified with a big grain of salt. And I'm not talking about 2024. The things that I'm going to suggest, I'm thinking 3 to 5 years out. So for example, think 2027. And as a result, this is the first time in my career, I'm sure that I've exaggerated at various points in my life. Although not really my habit, I don't try to exaggerate. This is the first time in my career that I'm comfortable using the word revolution. This is not going to be some small technical enhancement. I predict that in the future history of humanity, this will be viewed as a major milestone akin to the Industrial Revolution. And I want to emphasize that the comments that we're making and what we're looking at are baby 1.0 products. And these capabilities are increasing, either at some kind of linear rate or perhaps even accelerating. And this is another important thing to grasp, is that things are moving fast. And it's either going to be, in my opinion, an exponential growth curve on the capabilities of these AI systems, or perhaps more likely an S-curve reflecting some kind of logistical growth. And then the question becomes, well, what is the rate limiting thing on the capacity for how AI systems might get intelligent? And I suspect the big limiting factor is going to be the training data. That might be what limits how far we can make these systems intelligent. And one of the big open questions, Mark Andreessen calls it the trillion-dollar question, is can synthetic data take us further? So for those of you who don't know, synthetic data is data, video, images, sound created by AIs. And an unresolved question is that can current generation AIs create massive amounts of the synthetic data, which then train next generation AIs, and can that keep growing, or really are we rate limited by the organic data that we currently have? So an open question at the moment. But a key point I want to make is that at the very least, regardless of whether we're rate limited or not, I predict that we've got at least a 10-year runway of what's going to be explosive growth in the capabilities, the power of these systems. And so anyone who listens to this talk later on and then says something like, oh, Craig, you can't do X very well in 2023, is missing the point of what we're trying to suggest, which is think about 2028 or 2030, what's going to happen with the tools then. That's where I'm really thinking about the impact of AI and organizational design. Why highlight this in this course? Heck, this is the second keynote since 2020 that I've given on this topic. And the reason is this. Please read this. The argument that I'm going to try to make is that I believe there's a high probability that the influence of AI systems will be towards the kind of people behavior and organizational behavior that we already are promoting in less. And so I think that there's a market opportunity where there's going to be an alignment between the ideas that we suggest in less and where AI tools are pushing us. And this, I predict, will open up a market opportunity for more organizations that might be interested in less. And so I'm inviting all of you to attend to this point and see where you can use it to help market and open the interest in less through the doorway of the implications of AI. Minor terminology point. An AI developer, what does that mean? Well, it means a developer that creates AI systems. So if I want to talk about a person that's using AI tools to do regular development, it would be inappropriate to call them an AI developer. That means something else. So what do we call a developer that's strongly focused on using AI tools to develop? Well, in 20 years, that will just be developer. But in 2023, it maybe is worth a special name. And so I suggest calling them GLAD developers, for generative AI and LLM-assisted development, as opposed to those sad developers that are still doing traditional development. And that's why at LinkedIn, demo. And I want to show a demo of some of these capabilities in this baby introductory 1.0 products, just so you have a sense of where this is going, and especially for the YouTube audience and the directors of HR that might watch this video in 6 months, so they can get a more concrete sense of the implications of this. Oh, actually, let me set this up by making a point. From product managers through to architects and data scientists, these are some of the traditional roles that we see in product development. And what I want to do in this demo is illustrate how AI tools can assist with tasks in these different single specializations. Let's start with graphic artists. So imagine I want to create a website to sell vintage musical instruments. I can just say, vintage guitars played by farmers inside of a barn with a dancing pig in the style of Rembrandt. It took me around 1 second to type that in, and it took around 3 seconds to generate these alternatives. Well, I'm not going to belabor the point, but traditionally it would have taken days, weeks, to ask a traditional commercial artist to make even one of these concept images. And of course, this just is a dramatic order of magnitude change in the speed and the ease. And now I don't even need to ask an artist to do this. I can do this, and I'm a crappy artist. Let's look at another example. Web development. Everything from the front end to the back end, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the whole design of the website, and so on and so forth. Let's look at this video for about 1.5 minutes of one of a whole world of these tools called Wizard. I'm not especially promoting this particular product, but it's just an example of a whole family of related products.
Second-hand marketplace for selling and buying.
Can we pick up the sound through? I have to change it on here. I'm just looking for my mouse. Here it is. And this one here? Mm-hmm. Oops.
And try to place it.
Okay.
Vintage musical instrument that sounds bad. And the second problem is for describing our style. So the first one is like the project ID, like what it is that you want to generate. And the second one is like, what is the style you want this project to have? So think of it as like the theme of your app or website, or the aesthetic that you want to go after. So here it could be dark modes, tones of blue, for example, elegant. You can also just pick like some of the keywords here if you're out of ID. Otherwise, you can just describe it in here in the prompt. And now we're going to hit generate and wait for the... We've noticed so many of our customers and ourselves, whenever we are using the blank page syndrome, we all have IDs instead of know where to start and how to start. So the goal of Auto Designer is to inspire you and give you something that's better than the blank screen to start from. And there we go. Now we have our website being generated right here. Wow! You can zoom.
Now, we don't need to go any further. The key point is that just from a few lines of text, it has generated an entire website, and not just a toy mock-up, but everything, the whole conceptual design of it, all of the art, all of the HTML through JavaScript, the front end, back end, everything. And I think that took around 45 seconds of waiting. You don't like it? Do another one. You don't like it? Do another one. Mind blowing. Next example. Let's take a look at, come over here, just looking for my mouse. Let's take a look at Bard. I know that Bard is not yet active in Europe. Let's just see if that works. Just testing it. But I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if in 3 or 4 years I'm exaggerating, we barely remember ChatGPT and OpenAI. Because as you might know, the transformer technology that is the basis of this comes from Google. Google has the world's best AI people in general. I don't mean to disparage other groups. There's lots of great developers out there, but they've got the really deep bench. Of course, they've got DeepMind in London. And they could have created ChatGPT, but that just wasn't in their product roadmap so quickly. And so watch the space for everything that Google is doing, because they're probably going to make a huge impact over the next couple of years. So let's just start with Bard before we go to GPT-4. And the context of this is that I'm going through some demos on some of the different traditional roles of development: product management, business analysis, coding, and so forth. And let's start, here. Teach me what a business analyst needs to know about the Maritime Carbon Intensity Indicator Rating Scheme. So I just picked a sort of semi-random requirement in the shipping industry. And in traditional development, how would an understanding of this flow from its origination, say, in some EU government scheme, all the way through to developers? Well, often there'd be some middlemen in between the originator and the final developers, such as business analysts or product managers. But now, and so this starts to put into question the question, well, why do we need a business analyst? Why can't the developer easily learn this stuff? Bear in mind that these are 24/7, infinitely patient teachers. They're going to become smarter every year. They're going to become deeper and deeper experts. Why would I, as a developer, want to ask a middleman business analyst these questions when I can more effectively learn directly from a world expert, deep, infinitely patient? Next. So then I ask, thinking like a programmer, what is an algorithm for this carbon intensity indicator? This is something that a programmer would want to know. Or perhaps originally a business analyst would read some documents and try to figure out the algorithm. And we see some answers from that. Next. This one's interesting. Create Python code for that algorithm. Now, you could imagine taking the point of the role of programmers. Imagine I'm a skilled TypeScript or JavaScript developer, but I'm somewhat new to Python, but for whatever reason, the organization is doing this work in Python. Traditionally, someone might have said, oh, it'll take too long to learn a new language. We need a Python specialist to do this. But now with these tools, I can ask it to help me to generate this code while I'm learning about Python. And more of the same. Look at this. Create unit tests for that. So traditionally, testing is not even necessarily done because, oh, that would take too long, and et cetera, et cetera. Perhaps you can see from the implication of this is that you can now just point these tools at kind of arbitrary code, and it can generate unit tests that surround it. Next. I'm going to take this code here, starting at this point. Whoops. And sorry for my clumsiness here. Let's see if that got it. That's not what I want. I'm just setting up the code that I'm going to use. Okay. Now, where's my mouse? There's my mouse. Let's go to GPT-4. And I've just generated some code with 𝘮𝘪. But now let's see what GPT has to say about that code. Do a code review for, and then let's paste in all of that code. And look at that. It even ended up creating an alternative to improve the code. And so you could imagine using multiple AIs to generate the code and asking other AIs to review it, or heck, behind the scenes, a set of these competing AIs interact in order to figure out how to make the code better and better according to some principles of architecture or good design. Next. And maybe I don't want it in Python. Maybe I want that in TypeScript instead. And so now we see an example of a tool that's taking code written in Python and is rewriting it in TypeScript. Consider all of the scenarios in which traditionally developers and managers have said it would be too effortful to rewrite code in a different language because, or we need some expert because. Notice that this revolutionizes that. Next. What are the top 3 competitors of Stripe, and what are their strengths and weaknesses? This is the kind of question that a traditional product manager might ask. You get the idea. Stop generating that. As a product manager, tell me some ideas to create innovative features for new online payment processing solution. And so not only can these tools help support existing traditional product managers, but one could imagine an organization in which even the developers were leading the innovation and they're using these tools to generate ideas. I'm thinking of using Stripe. And so then as a developer, I ask the question, show me JavaScript for the Stripe payment API. Imagine traditionally someone says, oh, let's spin up a progress to figure out how to use Stripe that could take hours or days to determine, and now, of course, so quick. Here's an example of going to a higher level. People might say, well, these tools, maybe they can generate little tiny functions or so forth. But for example, create an app in Flutter that looks like and behaves like WhatsApp. You know, and imagine traditionally an organization saying, wow, it's going to take us too long to learn Flutter. We need to hire experts, blah, blah, blah. And now it's doing that. Create a checklist in a table for UI elements for a sign-up process, the kind of thing that a traditional, perhaps UI designer might get involved in. And these tools are increasingly going to embed UI design insight and advice. And use these elements to create a web page in HTML, TypeScript, and CSS. Done. Write cucumber tests for a sign-up process, the kind of thing that in traditional development a single specialist tester would be asked to do. And to state the obvious, not only can I, just a regular developer, use these tools to do this stuff, but we're talking about doing it in seconds. Moving to a slightly more architectural level, write a microservice in Python for a tax calculator. Oh, I don't know about microservices. And you get the idea. Write a Python program that uses the strategy pattern to output a message to the console or to a file. This is an example of then directing the AI with some particular design or architectural intent. Done. Assuming I am a novice, give me an introduction to Kubernetes. And so I can learn more about many technologies with the aid of these patient and deep tools. Or look at this variation. Assuming I am an expert in Amazon Elastic Container Services, give me an introduction to Kubernetes, making connections to similar ideas in that. In short, really tailored information for where I'm at. Write SQL code to define commonly used tables and fields for e-commerce, something that you would ask your traditional database designer to create. And finally, for those of you who have a background in database design, does this schema conform to third normal form? A kind of question that you would expect a database design expert to answer. Mind blown. All right. That concludes the demo. And to repeat, I was trying to illustrate how these tools are going to start to address the tasks of virtually all of the existing single specialist roles in development. Now let's look at some of the organizational design impacts of this. Historically, we've used computers and software to automate. And as we've automated, we've supplanted the humans from their traditional roles. And up through from 1950s to quite recently, we were basically still focusing on just the automation of information flows. And the harder task of automating routine knowledge work or routine expertise was beyond our grasp. But now with AI and machine learning, it is. And so now we can move into powerful task-specific AIs, which once again is going to lead to the supplanting of traditional human work. That is, these roles. And where we're going, I predict, is that since all of this is routine knowledge work or routine expertise, it already has been automated with AIs, or over the next 3 to 5 years will be automated with AIs. Please read. This is a key point that I want to unpack, because you're going to hear people say something like, oh, well, I'm a front-end designer, I'll still have my role and job, and I will simply be using these tools to do my front-end design work more quickly and effectively, or etc. for all of these single specialist roles. And what I want to do is explore that. This is back from 2019 or 2020. We're going to get automated, it's just a matter of time, said a UI designer, and they are correct. And I want to now explore the key analysis for a few minutes. Conclusion number 1 that I'd like to explore. We just saw the brief demo on YouTube of 𝘲𝘲𝘪, and it generated an entire website and its services in about 1 minute. Another tool, 30 seconds. A mobile app, a richly functioning mobile app in 18 minutes. A recent analysis in which it took 7 minutes and $1 of cost to generate software. A 100% test coverage in a system in a few minutes. A while ago, I was working in Lisbon, and I met a person who was, I could be wrong, but if I recall, they were a Scrum Master or an Agile coach. And she said that she had set herself the goal of adding automated tests using, I think, 𝘮𝘂𝘶 for her application, which had very little acceptance end-to-end testing in place. And she gave herself, and I could be wrong on this, but if memory serves, she gave herself 10 or 20 person days in order to learn about automated testing, which she knew nothing about, and then creating all of the end-to-end acceptance tests for her product. She was finished by the end of the first day. In 8 hours, she'd completely finished a task that she had previously estimated would take 10 to 20 days. Let's consider some of the numbers. Please read this. PD stands for person days. This column here is essentially capturing the order of magnitude impact. And I don't want to quibble on the particular values of the person days or the particular values of the number of minutes. We could be off by orders of magnitude, but I'm much more interested in seeing the directionality of where this is going, also bearing in mind that what will these numbers be in 3 to 5 years? Please read this. This is the main point that I want to make. In brief, it's not going to be a 20% improvement in productivity or efficiency. That's not understanding it. We're talking about 1,000 times faster or less effort, or 10,000 times faster or less effort. This is the key point. These tools are not making people 50% better, faster, cheaper. It's 1,000 to 10,000 times. And I think it's important for the future listeners of this video and for all of us to grasp a sense of this dramatic order of magnitude impact that's coming. So it's 1,000x, not 1.2x, like current people might think using these tools. Well, what's the implication of tools that allow us to go 1,000 times faster or easier, with less errors, with the ability of just plain old general developers being able to use these tools, and with very little effort to use them? So this is conclusion number 1. We're not talking about 1.2 faster, we're talking about 1,000x faster. Please read. Conclusion number 2. I will simply work more efficiently in my single specialty with AI, repeating a point that we just explored. Really? Imagine you're a single specialist, UI designer or database designer, that can do with AI tools what previously took 240 person days, in other words, a typical full year's worth of work, in now 2 person days or 20 person days. This kind of change is what is being implied by these tools that are 1,000 times enhancers or 10,000 times enhancers. Okay. So we have a person that was using 240 person days to output something, UI design, database design, now being done in 2 to 20 person days. Then the question arises, what will that UI or database designer do for the remaining 220 days of the year? I think this is an important question to actually seriously contemplate, not to just brush over. It's going to be a real question. What will the UI or database designer do for the remaining 220 days of the year? Perhaps they will create 1,000 more user interfaces. Perhaps they will create 1,000 more databases. But think about this slowly. Don't get into sloppy thinking here. No, because there's no customer demand. There's nobody asking for 1,000 more databases or user interfaces. That's the key point. So management isn't going to ask people to generate trillions of piles of things that nobody needs. It just makes no economic sense at all. Key point. So what will the UI or database designer do for the remaining 220 days? Well, maybe if there's 20 of these database designers, we'll fire all of them except one of them, who then does all of the design. And I claim the following. That's unlikely because they still have 200 days or 180 days left because these tools are 1,000 times powerful. Unlikely because, and this is a key point, other developers can use these tools to quickly learn and create the designs. And unlikely because it would create completely unnecessary delays and weak feedback loops. Why on earth do we want to wait for that database designer using the AI tools to do the thing and have to wait for them for some days to do it when I can do it in a matter of seconds? The context is such that that would just be very strange and artificial. And this is true for UI design and coding and testing and product management and business analysis and architecture. Conclusion number 2. A single specialist won't have enough single specialist work for all 240 days. Not nearly, I suggest. Conclusion number 3, let's explore. We just saw this slide about what will the database designer do with the remaining 220 days, and I want to now just briefly double-click on number 2, unlikely because other developers can use these tools to quickly learn and create UI designs, database designs, and so forth. So one of the key points that I would love for people to grasp is that AI tools make it much easier to learn new skills and tools. Much easier. And they're available 24/7. They're infinitely patient. They can tailor their answers to your particular context. And every 6 months, they're going to become deeper world experts. So a UI or database designer can much more easily or quickly learn to do automated testing, front-end coding, and so forth. Imagine you're previously called a database designer. Now you've got 220 days free in the year to do something else because it took you almost no time to do your previous single specialist task. Well, you've got all of these powerful tools that allow me, the database designer, to help out with automated test or to help out with coding and so forth really easily. And therefore, this suggests that this will create an influence to push people to become primary, secondary, tertiary specialists, where they're not just doing one thing, but they can do skills learning with these 24/7, infinitely patient, world expert AI teachers. So conclusion number 3, AI tools will make it easy and fast to learn new skills and subjects and make it easy to multi-learn and multi-skill. Conclusion number 4. If a database designer does database tasks for 20 days per year and also learns and does UI design, programming, testing for the other 200 days, why do they have the single specialist job title database designer? And why is there a career path of database designer 1, 2, 3? Why? It doesn't make any sense. So that implies, I predict, a HR impact to new role and responsibilities, a broad and flexible job title with a career path that focuses on multi-learning, a job title like product developer, not software developer, product developer, that can span everything from product management to analysis to design, architecture, coding, and so forth. Then that implies that teams of developers, feature teams that do complete end-to-end full-stack development to try to solve some customer outcome, won't be a team of these single specialists for the reasons that we've just explored. But rather, will be a team in the future of multi-learning, glad product developers. And this is not a new idea. What are the roots of Scrum? 1978 to 1982, Harvard Business School, Drs. Takeuchi and Nonaka explored characteristics of organizations, and then in 1986 they published this popularizing article in the Harvard Business Review. This is where the name Scrum comes from and so forth. And what did Nonaka and Takeuchi identify as key characteristics of these organizations? A focus on multi-learning and a focus on transfer of learning new skills to people. So we're going back to the roots of Scrum and seeing its full realization with the support of AI tools. And thus, I predict increasingly job skill will be skill in multi-learning over single doing. Conclusion number 4, AI tools influence multi-learning product developers, and that will influence a career path towards multi-skilling rather than single specialization. Conclusion number 5. This is the novelty of knowledge work from relatively low and routine, which I suggest has been or will soon be automated by AIs. Well, what's up at the high end of the novelty of knowledge work? And the answer is learning new things. And this is an important point for everyone to understand. After the training step, AIs do not learn. I've discovered that a lot of people unfamiliar with AIs incorrectly think, for example, that GPT is learning or that BARD is learning. No, they're completely frozen knowledge babies. They get trained for 6 months or a year in a data center with a huge amount of effort, and then that training is done. And after that point, GPT or BARD is just a frozen thing which learns nothing more. And so the current generation of AI technology, AIs don't learn dynamically. They're just frozen. This is one of the most important milestone papers in AI ever. Some of you may have heard of something called the Turing test. Note, this is just considered a joke in the AI community for many decades. It's a fun thing to share with people who don't aren't familiar with the subject, but serious AI people have no interest in the Turing test. And people like François Chollet at Google, in this milestone paper on the measure of intelligence, have suggested, well, how we would actually measure intelligence in a system in a way that we really care about. And the key point of this paper and insight is that for us, the relevant intelligence of a system, and you could substitute here human system or artificial system, is a measure of its skill acquisition efficiency. That means how efficiently it can learn new things. And key point, AIs completely fail this test. AIs cannot learn new things on a day-by-day basis. It's a big, huge training effort to train it, and then they become frozen. And on the other hand, humans pass this test with ease. Humans excel at being able to learn new things. Conclusion number 5. The value add for us humans in the future will be the ability to learn new skills, not to be able to do a single task, because that's what AIs can do. Conclusion number 6. What existing organizational design is consistent with teams of multi-learning product developers that do end-to-end full-stack development? And you know the answer to that. It's less. Less from the ground up, from day one, is based upon this assumption. And so it is so fit for purpose with where I think AI is influencing development to go in terms of its organizational design impact. And no other framework of org design has that kind of real fit for purpose with where AI is taking us. Not a force fit, this is a natural fit. Less is. So conclusion number 6, the less organizational design is based upon multi-learning product developers, and that's the direction that AI tools are influencing us. Conclusion number 7, and the last one. This won't change manager roles. There is no database design group because there are no database designers. So is there a database design manager? Of course, no. And so this implies, conclusion number 7, an org design based upon multi-learning product developers implies a reduction of single specialist groups, and that implies a reduction in single specialist group managers, another impact on org design. To conclude, 1,000 times faster, easier, not 1.2 times. Single specialists won't have enough specialist work for all 240 days. AI tools make multi-learning easy fast. AI tools influence the motivation for multi-learning people, multi-learning product developers. That influences the career path towards multi-skill rather than single skill. The human value add will be the ability to multi-learn, not single do. The less organization design is based upon these ideas and dovetails perfectly with AI influence, and few single specialist groups implies few related manager roles. So we suggest that this product market fit or concept market fit of the less organizational design and the impact of AI in product development is a really excellent fit. And so we view this as a market opportunity to both improve the world of work and be able to have more people interested in the ideas of less because of this story that I've been analyzing. That's the close of my talk, and I think I'll just end by making a tangential comment. It seems to me that what we're getting with these tools, I call it intelligence as a service. And it seems to me that, and many others, that intelligence and amplifying intelligence is one of the greatest opportunities that humanity has. Consider something like the climate crisis. Well, some of you might know about something called nuclear fusion, not nuclear fission, which is what today's nuclear reactor's on, but nuclear fusion, which is how the sun works. And the dream of engineers and scientists for a long time has been for nuclear fusion reactors. These can, to simplify a little bit, essentially be run on water. They just use deuterium, so it's an infinite supply of just cups of water to fuel all the electricity generation of the world. Point one. Nuclear fusion reactors don't produce any harmful radiation or side effects like that. And nuclear fusion reactors can just generate massive, massive amounts of power and electricity with almost no inputs. And of course, they're completely green. Now, what's the problem in getting to nuclear fusion? There's a couple of key problems. One is that in nuclear fusion, you create a plasma which is, let's say, for example, 50 million degrees centigrade, so hot that no physical container can hold it. So the engineering idea for controlling the plasma in nuclear fusion is to have magnetic fields that control the flux. But controlling these magnetic fields is these plasma fields and the magnetic fields is really difficult. DeepMind in London, England, the sub-company of Google, which has some of the deepest bench in AI in the world, a few years ago have kicked off a project that they call Alpha Fusion. And they're making progress on this towards the ability of an AI that can create the magnetic fields that control this plasma flux. And there's a good chance, this is the key point that I want to make, there's a good chance within 10 years or less, this will be a solved engineering problem. When that happens, the clock is ticking on the worldwide deployment of nuclear fusion technology. And I predict that nuclear fusion will be a real thing within 40 to 50 years. And when that happens, this will change everything. Because with nuclear fusion, we're going to have a worldwide supply of infinite amounts of electricity at a really low cost. So not only will this end the climate crisis in terms of eliminating the need for carbon creation into the atmosphere, but we'll even have energy to be able to help clean up the atmosphere. And so just as one of many optimistic points I'd like to leave you with, yes, the climate crisis is a problem and we should all care about reducing carbon and so forth, but in my opinion, the future looks super bright and super optimistic. We are going to turn the corner on this stuff, and AI and intelligence as a service is going to be an aid in the future, making the world a little better. Thank you very much.